Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz, your host, and very pleased to be joined tonight by someone who's a good friend of the show and I think a good friend of mine. Anyway, City Manager Mark Rohloff is here tonight, and we're going to talk about a whole host of things. So welcome.
Well, welcome. You called me a friend, so that's a good start to the show.
That's a good start. We'll see if we're still saying that at the end.
I guess we will. So let's see what you got, though.
We go back a number of years, and we've never had a problem yet.
No,
so this is a good thing. So we're taping this on the 5th of July, so we want to talk about the 4th a little bit. And, you know, this is weird, and we were talking before we started taping that because the holiday fell right smack dab in the middle of a work week, it's kind of throwing everybody and everything off a little bit. Like Sawdust Days, for example. Typically, that ends with the 4th of July or the 3rd of July with the fireworks and all that, and not so this year.
Yeah, it's been a little different, and so Sawdust Day started on Tuesday the 3rd and run through Saturday the 7th. The last couple of years, the council asked that the fireworks be on the 4th every year. I called it the traditionalist approach. They had bounced around from different dates depending on when the 4th of July fell, but
Right.
now that the last couple of years they just said, let's just keep it on the 4th. So I think that works for other groups and everything. But being midweek is kind of odd, and so as we're taping, Sawdust Days is only halfway through.
Yeah.
And so seems like things went well. Weren't aware of anything. Usually if things heat up, and I hate to use that term with all the weather heat we've been having, but that usually has that's a function of when you have issues, people get ornery in the heat. So let's hope that it cools down a little bit and things are okay. But didn't seem to be any real issues over the first couple days of Sawdust Days, which is good. And last night I was out there for the fireworks show, and things seemed to go very well, even in the heat.
Yeah. I wasn't in town to see the fireworks show that we have. I was at my own in another city, but, well, not my own, but I was watching fireworks in another community. But I would have liked to have seen ours. And Appleton did theirs on the 3rd this year. I don't know what year or what day of the week they typically do them, but I know that some years anyway, theirs have been on the 4th, and theirs is a nice show too. But
yeah, I think a lot of it depends on different preferences. The last couple of years we've had it religiously on the 4th, but before that we bounced around. I think some of it's if people like to go travel from one show to the next, they can get a whole week of shows in, especially as weird as this year is. But there were a handful of shows. WFRV does all the displays on TV, any that are held on the 4th, and there were about 4 or 5 locations last night that they showed off, and Oshkosh was one of them. So it was nice publicity.
Yeah, that's good.
Appreciate. We got a partnership with Festival Foods. They go halves with us on the show, so I guess they get naming rights, the Festival Foods fireworks show, but the city also contributes part of that, and we're happy to do that.
Yeah, great. So we don't know yet of any problems that there may have been regarding Sawdust Days, but last year, with some of the changes that you had asked them to make as a city, and they, gladly, well, I don't know how gladly they were at the beginning, but in the end, you guys finally came to a meeting of the minds, and that, I think, reduced a lot of the problems with, police having to break up fights and what have you, and all the arrests. But so far, you haven't heard of anything like that this
Haven't
year.
heard or seen anything. There was a group of folks that were willing to try to experiment with some things. They looked at what the Wisconsin Rib Fest did. That's what the Rotary clubs hold that on Labor Day weekend, and they had a little more open. So they tried to follow pretty much what they had done, and they didn't seem to like it too much. But there's been some compromising and whatnot. But the whole idea is to make the corridors a little wider so that people aren't just jammed into a big funnel where it's like ants in a terrarium. You put them too close together, it just gets crazy. So if you spread it out a little more, people really just respond to that very positively. And the Midway was crowded last night, but I think it was going to be crowded regardless.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
but it was wide. There were areas where people could go flow back and forth, and I think that helps. And you know, everybody has an opinion about sawdust days. For the people who want to have it for families, having that wider is easier for families with strollers and younger kids that, you know, they don't want to lose track of those kids. They got to hang on to them as much as they can. And I think those are positive things. So if the temperature stays cool, which so far not so good, but people are cooperative and just courteous to each other, I don't anticipate any problems.
Yeah. You know, the one thing, I mean, and I'm not a Debbie Downer about fireworks. However, I think that people who shoot them off really need to be respectful of their neighbors. And we just don't see a whole lot of that. And I don't think it's Oshkosh that is, you know, we don't have the market cornered on that by any means. People are just kind of rude and thoughtless in a lot of places. But I was talking to a friend of mine who lives in Colorado, and her city has actually banned them from being used in the city, period. Can't be sold there, can't be used there. I don't know. I mean, is there anything that can be done to somehow limit some of this noise? Because, I mean, it seems to start like maybe, well, depending on when the 4th falls, it can start this time. I think it started the weekend before, and it still went on. You know, it's going to go on a little bit, probably into this coming weekend. And then I think most people will have their fireworks gone. But we know that these things that people are shooting off, if it leaves the ground, it's illegal unless you've got a permit. But what can be done? Is there anything more that can be done, Mark?
You know, I think it's tough to regulate something that is so loosely addressed. Things are for sale, and it's amazing people get access to these fireworks that you really should need a permit. I'm sure if you talk to the legitimate fireworks folks, they would say absolutely tighten down on it because that would help them. But I think it's really more about people being courteous to one another and be respectful of that. You know, do you have to have the 4th of July celebrated on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, or just concentrate it and think of your neighbors and things like that? Whether people have dogs, I heard this week people were asking to be considerate to veterans that may have
PTSD,
post-traumatic stress. So yeah, I think it's just common courtesy regardless. I mean, if you've got a neighbor who, especially this week, if they got to get up at 5 in the morning to go to work, you know, blowing the fireworks off at midnight isn't really very courteous. I'm sure that person would love to see the fireworks just as well as anybody, but when it's bedtime, you got to think a little bit. So I think it's more of that. Culturally, it's tough to change those habits, but if you just think about your neighbors and just, you know, act courteously, I think that'd be a good thing for starters.
Well, and I think the police probably get inundated with calls. I know in previous years I've been one of them because, you know, when it keeps going on and it's going until 1 in the morning or 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning, there's no reason for that, you know. And now I have dogs, for example. I try and let them out before it gets dark and the fireworks really start. But then, you know, you want to let them out again before you go to bed. Well, if people are shooting off fireworks until 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, that kind of closes that window. And, you know, dogs just it's not just mine. No dogs really like fireworks for the most part. And, you know, it wreaks havoc on a pattern that you try and set in your household. And then for the veterans too, I hadn't thought about that until just in the last couple of days. And that's true, you know. I mean, of course, who knows if we have veterans among us, but
yeah, that'd be hard to tell. That's why it's just got to be common courtesy, because I think that you know, the person has to get up at 5 in the morning for work the next day has, you know, just as much right to have peace and quiet. You know, once things, you know, die down over the evening, and that can, you know, you never know whether it's sawdust days or just any event. The police still have their routines they need to follow through. They still have to, you know, look for liquor enforcement and things like that.
Sure.
So if people can just be a little more courteous, because if it's 1 in the morning and it's a quiet night, otherwise, and they get complaints, they're gonna go to those noise complaints. If there's a fire issue, they're going to be all over it. You were just sharing with me a story. You know, when it's a clear and present danger, not just a nuisance, you're going to see the fire department and the police get out there because you have to be safe. You can't be crazy about those. If you're, shooting Roman candles at each other, that's not a very bright thing to do, and we're going to have to step in and do something.
Nor is it neighborly.
No, it's probably not neighborly either.
But yeah, I mean, some of these things, I'm sure that some people, because here was the situation. I was in another community and we were driving down this residential street and there was a huge wheelbarrow with, I don't know what in, I'm assuming fireworks, but I don't know that for certain. But this whole wheelbarrow was on fire and the flames were licking at the person's home and licking at a nearby bush, and this was very quickly going to get way out of control. And so I did call the fire department. Well, I called 911 and they sent the fire department out and took care of it before it did start the house on fire or this bush on fire. But yeah, I mean, people sometimes aren't always real bright with how they're either disposing of these fireworks or whatever, and when they're shooting them off. And that's why emergency rooms start getting so many calls and people walking through the doors saying, hey, this happened, and here, look at my arm, and
it's like
my hands are all burned.
Yeah,
So,
indicators of stupidity in some cases.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
I know this is an issue that is near to your heart. I don't know how dear it is, but let's talk about the dark store legislation, because this is a big issue and it affects every single taxpayer. People, why don't we explain what a dark store is, first of all, and why this is such a big issue?
I want to make sure that, we've easily referred to it as the dark store issue. That's really just one half of the issue. And I'll talk about that, even though that hasn't been used as much in Oshkosh. But what some, and I would say big box retailers, have made attempts to do is to argue that their stores are so unique that they should be viewed differently than other properties. Highest and best use is the value, is how things are valued at. Your house is valued at highest and best, as mine is, as well as commercial and industrial properties. What they're arguing is that eventually this store will be vacant, and therefore it should be valued at its value when it's sold, not what it could be sold for today. And these properties change hands. Real estate investment trusts own these things, and they'll sell it for multi-million dollars, but they argue that it should be valued at what it will eventually be if and when it becomes vacant. So literally in one case, there was a property in town that said, we should be valued like the Kmart over there on Keller.
Yeah.
And that just makes no sense at all. There's been arguments, nobody would in their right mind would do that. That has happened, and people have made that argument. They haven't made it successfully, but it has happened in other states, and the concern we have is that that's going to be an issue. That's only half the issue. The other part of what we have grouped as dark store is something that was called the Walgreens case out of Madison. Walgreens Corporation sued the city of Madison over their assessment, and they are not saying that the three standards that assessors are supposed to follow for valuing properties. It's the market value, what it's sold for, an income approach, what the rent has been, or the cost of construction. And they didn't want any of those three. They argued that their lease is so unique that the lease approach is overvaluing their properties, and therefore they shouldn't be paying these what they call exorbitant assessments. Assessors have been assessing this way for decades in accordance with exactly what the Department of Revenue, the state of Wisconsin, says. Assessors, you need to assess it this way. Mm-hmm. They're arguing that their prices should be lowered. So their values have been lowered much below what they've sold for. In some cases, these properties are selling for $4 or $5 million. They're arguing they should be valued at $1 or $2 million because they're so unique. Well, the fact that they're called big boxes doesn't really make them very unique.
Right.
And I've seen plenty of Walgreens and Walmarts and Sam's Club get transformed into something different. So to say that they can't be transformed defies logic and defies reality. So that argument, the city of Madison lost, and they had, and I hate to be so generalistic, but they hired Chicago lawyers who've got several stories of a law office in Chicago, and they are making their money on representing Walgreens and suing cities throughout the Midwest. That's all they do. And you've got an assessor in one community, and they're just getting taken to the cleaners because they can't compete with these high-priced attorneys who have all these legal resources at their disposal, and they're just picking off one by one. They took the Madison case to the Supreme Court. The city of Madison lost. The second city that went to court on this was us, the city of Oshkosh, and we lost. The third one was the city of Appleton with a CVS store, and they similarly lost. In both Appleton's and Oshkosh's case, they used the Madison case as the precedent. Now it's Supreme Court. A majority of the state legislature, both Republicans and Democrats, feel that something should be done, but it's being held up in the state assembly by Speaker Voss, and it's not moving anywhere. So what we did over the past year, cities throughout the state through the League of Wisconsin Municipalities have made a very compelling case, and it got through the committees, but it never got for a vote on the assembly floor, even though they don't have a majority in either party to completely pass it, but between both parties, bipartisan support would pass it today if it was brought up to a vote. All of our local legislators, both Democrats and Republicans, all of them have supported dark store reform, and yet it's not brought to the floor.
So dark store reform being good for cities?
Yes,
okay.
and for you and me.
Right, because explain why this matters and why it should matter to you as a taxpayer, no matter where you live.
Your tax dollar, your tax bill is really a cutting of the pie. Here's the tax bill for the entire community. For us, it's $35 million. So we have to take $35 million and split it amongst every taxpayer in town. So when the slice of the tax bill, the assessment goes lower for these commercial businesses, it gets picked up by somebody else. The tax bill doesn't go down. The overall tax we collect is the same. We're limited by how much we can raise that levy in a single year. So the slice, if they get a smaller slice, you and I take in a larger slice. And then the other part that I think a lot of people are missing the point on, this also hurts small businesses, because small businesses can't use these slick triple net leases to make this argument that their lease is overpriced. These are people who own their business, they own the property their business is on. They're getting stuck with this larger tax bill, just like you and I are.
Sure.
So this isn't an anti-business. This is a fairness issue.
Right.
And they've created a loophole through the court system. I mean, you hear people complain about courts legislating. The courts have legislated. They have actually gone against what the uniformity clause of our state constitution. They've gone against the assessor's manual that is written by the State Department of Revenue, approved by the state legislature, and they're telling people we should reduce their assessable value at the expense of you and me.
It makes me want to not shop at places like Walgreens, like CVS, and some of these other very large big box stores, because they have the most money, and yet they want to pay the least, and they're successfully paying the least amount of taxes that they can possibly pay. And so it makes me want to just not shop there at all.
I'll leave that up to you and your viewers to make that decision, But you're going to see me at those stores. I mean, we all go to those stores.
Yeah.
But certainly fairness is really what this is about.
Well, right. And if they're spreading a larger amount of tax debt over your taxes, my taxes, the taxes that my crew pays, the taxes that the viewers and listeners pay, that's not right. That's not right. Here's my question, though, Mark. So the Department of Revenue, at least in the state of Wisconsin, I'm assuming it may be the same in other states, but if the Department of Revenue already has laws on the book that say, okay, here's how you assessors must assess these properties, then what good will it do to pass legislation? And won't the big box stores that we're talking about here challenge it anyway in a court?
Well, they can't, if they change the law to specify that these procedures are the way they're supposed to be, they're challenging our local assessments, even though the State Department of Revenue is telling us this is how you use the income, the market, and the construction cost approach. One of those three, and it's highest and best use. So the State Department of Revenue is kind of stuck. They don't know what to tell us.
Yeah.
So they're kind of stuck. They would have to make an argument that the state law was unconstitutional. What they said was our application of the law was unconstitutional, but there's no proof to it. In fact, we're following the state law to the letter, but
Sure.
the courts are ruling against us. The courts didn't say what the state did wrong. The courts didn't tell the state, you're giving incorrect advice to local assessors. So tell us what we're doing wrong and we'll fix it. But I'm not going to have an attorney tell me, a Chicago attorney tell me how to assess the property. I'm going to follow the rules, and we're following the rules to the letter, yet we're losing. So the legislature's got to take a stand on this. A majority of them want to do it, and it's just got to get pushed through. And so next Tuesday on the council agenda, I'm asking the council to help with an education and public information program to assist other cities in pooling our resources, because we got to work together. We just can't be fighting by ourselves. We'll get killed.
Yeah.
Similarly, Winnebago County is planning to put an advisory referendum on the ballot to ask countywide, should there be this type of reform? And I'm going to call it commercial property assessment reform, not just dark store reform. So look for that. Some of our county supervisors have been asking their board to do it, and I think they're working on wording that perhaps it'll be on the ballot in November.
Well, and County Executive Mark Harris is going to be on this show. I don't know the exact date, but it will be coming up in the next month or so, and I know he's going to talk about it too. But my concern is, these big companies who operate in all 50 states and parts of the world, they get these slick attorneys and they find loopholes all over the place. What was the other one that was in recent years where they got around paying certain taxes because they said that their actual corporate headquarters was not in a particular state. It was in another state. What was that called?
I don't remember.
It's escaping me right offhand.
I don't remember that one, but that may have been more on the federal side than the local property tax
Because
side.
I know that's something that Mark Harris had fought about for a long time, and that too was a tax loophole that we had made some progress forward, and then when Scott Walker was elected governor, he sort of repealed that back. He kind of undid it, just like we've got President Trump undoing everything that Obama has put forth.
Yeah, those are issues more at the state level.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stick to
right,
my
all
local
right.
issues because that's my territory.
So I hope that when these presentations are put together, I for one need to see numbers. I get this because I've talked about this with other people, but still I think for the ordinary folks to really get it, they need to see numbers, and so if you're putting together a PowerPoint or whatever, I hope that it's going to include, okay, let's give example A, B, and C, and here's how much they should be paying, here's what they end up paying, and here's how much is now being shoved off on the little guy. Everything is the budget is always balanced on the backs of the little guy, and now this stuff too.
I wouldn't be surprised if a number, I know what you're asking, the Village of Pleasant Prairie down near Kenosha, they've got a lot of retail, a lot of those outlet malls down there off of I-94. Their assessor went as far to say is that if you take this to its natural conclusion, the average property taxpayer is going to see their property tax bill go up by about $800
a year.
If you took it to its natural conclusion, that if everybody starts getting in line saying, me too, then you're going to have a bunch of these happen. And because remember, the property tax the levy, what we levy in total, isn't going up. The pie gets shifted, and so the shift is towards residential. And he estimated the average increase would be over $800 per residence.
Okay. So Speaker Voss in the state legislature is who we need to, send letters to, emails to, make phone calls to, and tell him that we don't like his holding things up. We want this dark store reform moving forward. So I for certain will be contacting Voss. Let's talk about the Lakeshore Municipal Golf Course.
Okay.
Can't have a show without talking about that, right? So we know that the Oshkosh Corp headquarters is going on a portion of the land. I, for one, Mark, was disappointed that a majority of the council felt that the rest of the property should not be a 9-hole course. And I think I'm not alone in that. I mean, a lot of people, I think, feel that way. And I think what the council was kind of looking at is these little polls that not that many people really participate in, who are saying, oh, we need a park there. There are so many parks a couple of parks that actually abut the property for the most part. And I just don't feel like we need another park there. Is this a done deal, or can there still be some hope for a 9-hole course there?
The council gave us direction that they took the recommendation from the Advisory Parks Board not to do anything with a golf course anymore. We don't have any specific plans for it. In fact, there's no real rush to do any changes, but the direction we received was that when we start working on this, that we work on just general parkland. I would take issue regarding the poll, because I think that's a misleading statement that some people have used. We use a firm called Pulco that is a Wisconsin-based company that's been gaining a lot of traction nationwide, and they use scientifically valid methods, much like Gallup poll does to, they estimate presidential elections with 1,600 people. We had over 1,000 people participate. That is extremely statistically valid. And they got over 1,000 people, which made, I think the validity of that was probably in the 97-98% range. So there is some validity.
Did it say that there were X number of parks already there? Or, do you know? No,
what it did was it just provided information about what a 9-hole golf course would entail, or general parkland. What we've seen through a lot of our citizen comments with park planning is, want more parkland, we want more parkland. So general parkland is in high demand.
Yeah.
And I think the bigger challenge we're going to have down the road is we're only going to have about 60 to 70 acres. I think the ideas are going to be significant and many. And we're going to have a tough time deciding what gets done with the balance of the parkland there, even without a golf course on the table. So that's where I think it's going.
I think a lot of it is how things are worded. And when Steve was on the show, Steve from the council was on, not Steve Cummings, the other Steve, Steve Herman, when he was on the show maybe a couple months back, we talked about this. And I just don't think that people are aware that there are already 2 parks that Mary Jewel is one, and I can't think of the other one.
Rainbow Park's adjacent.
No, there's another one, though, that kind of comes very close to the property. Mary Jewel, I think, abuts the property.
Correct.
And the other one...
West Algoma is across the street from there.
Yep, there was another one. I can't think of it right offhand. But, there's like 4 or 5 of them right within a 1-mile or 2-mile radius. And I don't think that a lot of people really realize that, If I just see something on a pole that says, oh, would you like more parkland? Who doesn't want more parkland? So I might be inclined to say yes.
Well, the question said, do you want a golf course or other parks? And by a 3-to-1 margin, people said other parks. So I think that's...
Because they probably didn't realize that there were a lot of parks right there. And they may not golf.
I would say there's a large part of people that don't golf.
Yeah, and so I think there's the problem. If they had been told, look, do you want another park here where we already have X number of parks? or would you rather see a golf course? I think the numbers might have been a little bit different, maybe, maybe not. I don't know, but I think when polls are done, they have to be done in such a way that it really presents all the facts and not just some of them. And I don't know. I think that it comes down to quality of life again. You know, should there be a municipal golf course? And I'll be the first to admit, like you know, that they don't make money, but neither do neighborhood parks, neither do libraries, neither do, you know, museums.
If they did, they'd be in the private sector.
Right, they don't make money, and so it comes down to a quality of life issue. But as far as some of the other changes along that Oshkosh Avenue corridor, kind of going all the way up to where the Congress Avenue Bridge is, and that includes Reps Bar. Walk us through some of the plans for that area, Mark.
Okay.
What's going on there?
A lot of it's still in development, but the idea of what council said was from Mary Jewel to the west on the north side, the privately owned land is being put in a new zone called a corporate business park. We never had that zone before, so that corporate business park raises the standards and makes virtually everything not just a conditional use but a planned development, which means that, you know, we may do some give and take on some standards, but the standards are going to be much higher in every case. Excuse me. The real test case so far, well, we're actually twofold. Mary Jewel Park, we were putting together a shelter for that park. Plus, we were also doubling up and putting a sewer lift station there. And the Plan Commission said, look, we're going to raise a standard out here. So that we paid a little more, and that was on our dime, not a private developer's dime. But we really had to set the example. If we're going to be putting up these new standards, it's going to be awfully hard for us to defend it if we're not doing it ourselves. So it was just, there were a little more gables on the roof and everything just to make it a little more blending in. The next one that came through was the Casey's General Store. And the Casey's General Store is essentially a convenience store, not unlike Quick Trip. But we were aware that in other areas, they're an Iowa-based company, and there are some places in some very swanky corporate business parks in Iowa, the western part of the Des Moines area, where they put in some very high-level construction standards. We were aware that they existed, and we said, we want what they have. And they tried to argue, well, yeah, but this isn't really the same type of area. It's like, it is now.
Yeah.
And so we just said, look, we have to raise the bar. A Casey's General Store was also approved on North Jackson Street, and that's a little more run-of-the-mill, let's say. But this one, we said we need to have a higher standard. And the council discussed and debated it, but ultimately went along with the higher standard. They included a gas station convenience store type, but you're not going to see pallets of salt or wood mulch chips. Mm-hmm. You're going to see all brick. You're going to see a sloped roof on the gas islands, not just some flat top thing. Mm-hmm. So it's going to look more in keeping with the standards we set. So I think it's risen the bar, and I think it's going to help raise the bar for subsequent developments and really make that area look what it should be. If we're going to be having a corporate 500 company, Fortune 500 company, excuse me, we're going to have similar standards out in that area as well.
Now, when you say Casey's General Store, is that a word like Casey?
That's
is it KC like Casey and the Sunshine Band?
Now you're dating both of us. Both of us,
yes.
Cheryl, because I know what no, CASEY.
Okay.
That's the name of the establishment. They're based in Iowa. They're Iowa's version of a Quick Trip. I got to say that. Okay. I'm sure they'll distinguish themselves differently. They can do their commercial later on, not me. But the idea is but we're not going to just have a run-of-the-mill convenience store there, regardless of what the name is.
Sure.
If it was Quick Trip, we'd have the same standards.
Are we going to see any more roundabouts in that corridor, or no?
No. Okay. Let me talk about the two intersections. One at Westfield that right now tees off at Highway 21. Mm-hmm. That's going to go straight through. We analyzed the possibility of a roundabout, but given the given the traffic patterns there, we want to encourage pedestrian traffic. And one of the things I think we can all agree on as we look in retrospect is roundabouts are not pedestrian friendly. And we want to encourage, we have a daycare center and we have Evergreen Retirement Home, and we want to encourage people to use this park. If we put a roundabout in, we're saying, well, pedestrians need not apply.
Yeah.
We can't do that. So council said, no, we want a T intersection with a walkway, with pedestrian crossings and things like that. Now let's move a little farther east. We haven't decided exactly zoning-wise what we're going to do over near where Sawyer is, but we know that we need to have that intersection in a classic cross intersection. Take Rainbow Drive, move it over, and line it up with Sawyer Street so that we have a normal intersection there.
Yeah, because that's a mess.
And roundabouts would absolutely not work
There's not
so
enough
close
room.
to the bridge. Well, so close to the bridge,
Yeah.
because when the bridge goes up, the roundabout's closed.
Yep.
So
Yep.
you really do need to have signals there. So
Yeah, it would not work there for sure.
that's going to be multiple years before that's done. We have to see the rest of the area develop so that tax increment gets created to be able to fund these things. So we're working on updating the plans for Rainbow Memorial Park. I have to say Rainbow Memorial Park now.
Has the name changed?
It never changed, but we're going back to the old. It was always in memory of the Rainbow Brigade. That was a group of Fond du Lac, Oshkosh, and Appleton divisions that fought in World War I. And they took a look at it, and somebody said, we should have it changed back to Rainbow Memorial Park. And we looked at it and said, we never unchanged it. So it's still Rainbow Memorial Park.
Is there a sign that says that?
We're going to put it up.
Okay,
Yep,
good,
we're going to put it up.
good.
So the whole idea is that Rainbow Memorial Park has some plans, and now we have to take a look at what's going to happen with the balance of Lakeshore and how those things function together. Because you're right, there are a lot of extra parkland, and how do you have those meshed together? So
Right.
we're going to be working on that.
And it was funny because as you were talking about, you just started saying lift station, and I was just writing it down. Explain for folks what a lift station is, because I've tried and I don't know. I don't know how to answer them.
Well, there's the old line that something rolls downhill.
Yes.
Well, when it doesn't roll downhill, you need a lift station. How's that?
Okay.
Basically, we have to get sewage pumped under Sawyer Creek to the south side of Sawyer Creek so it gets over to the sewage treatment plant. And this predates, we've been working on this for probably 5 years, long before Oshkosh Corporation. In fact, none of the Oshkosh Corporation sewage is even going to go to this lift station. This is that area, Panoqua East, that we actually had what's called a siphon. Just think of the drain in your sink at your house, where you have the U-shaped siphon where the pressure from the sink pushes it under. That works a little bit, but not when you're talking about major sewage. And we've been working off of a siphon for years. We need a lift station to pump this all through. And we haven't had any sewage backups there, but frankly, it's only a matter of time.
Sure.
So we felt a sewage lift station. We designed it to take care of everybody from Eagle East.
Okay.
And so it'll take care of everybody in that area.
Okay. We're down to like 20 minutes, and I can't even believe this, but I want to get through some of these other things here. But on the subject of that intersection of Oshkosh Avenue and Westfield, by the daycare, it would be just a little bit east of the daycare. There used to be an historic home there. And the placard, the sign is still there talking about the historic house, but the house was taken down years ago. Why do we still have a sign up that talks about an historic house when there's no house? Isn't that a little silly?
You'll have to bring in somebody from the Landmarks Commission to talk about
Really?
those types of things. I mean, that's that a lot of times they want to memorialize if there's some historic significance at that location, and I believe there was.
Well, it looks ridiculous.
Oh, okay. Well,
I'm sorry, but it does. It's pointing out a house that isn't even there.
Yeah.
So, all right, I'll talk to
I
the
think
Landmarks Commission about
I think it
that.
goes back to some of the history with the Sawyer family. They were, if I think I got the location right, it's near where West Algoma Park is, but there was a home there that originally was going to become a school, and then the school never got built there.
I think it has coal in the name of it. I'm not sure.
Oh, is
but
that right?
I
Okay.
think it does.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Well, boy, I got
Ask somebody on the
I
Landmarks
got to contact
Commission.
someone in the legislature. Now I got to contact the Landmarks Commission.
That's Shirley. Just give Shirley Maddox a call.
I will. I'll call her. Do you know she used to be my music teacher when I was in, well, what we called it junior high, but now it's middle school. But yeah, that's how far back Shirley and I.
Small world
Yes,
we live in.
and she was one of my favorite teachers. Still remember some of the things she taught.
Oh, yeah.
So, okay, there is, let's see. Oh, I want to get to a question that someone asked me to ask of you.
Yeah.
How much diversity is on our staff right now?
It's a real challenge. I'm not even going to try to sugarcoat it. We have a population of about 90% white, and I would say maybe 1% of our workforce are people of color. It's a real challenge. I think we've been working on some things to improve that. A lot of it comes down to just good old-fashioned recruitment that I think we need to do a better job of. And I think we have an opportunity because we have a lot of people who are retiring, a lot of baby boomer age. But we have to look at creative ways to do it because it's not as simply as saying, well, we've run an ad and everybody can read it and you're welcome to apply. I think our police department's done a really good job in the past couple of years. Chief Dean Smith has instituted a cadet program where essentially we've worked with a program that exists at the state level that will reimburse us to send somebody through cadet school to get their police license. We hire that person conditionally with the expectation you will successfully go through the program. You won't commit any faux pas.
Yeah.
And we'll pay you while you go to school. And at the end of the program, we will hire you. And we're fortunate enough to just hire somebody, a person of color, and we're happy that he's on board with us.
Sure.
And it's those types of creative moves we have to work on. The council did approve a new position in the budget to work on recruitment and retention, and that's just the start. But I think we do need to find ways to attract and retain people of color. I just approved today a session for that new person to go to on recruiting for diversity and inclusion. So that we're getting started. I got to put myself on the hook for that. I mean, that's something that I need to be responsible for. The council's going through their strategic plan within the next month. I expect that this is going to rise up in the priority list. Okay. And I think you're going to see more of it. So I'm not, I got to be accountable. So next time I'm on, you're going to have to quiz me again.
I'm going to poke at that again.
And that's okay. I think we need to do that. Yeah. Even with our annual survey, which we use Polko to try to improve our response rate. Mm-hmm. Our response rate amongst people of color was less than 2%, yet they're 10% of our population. Mm. We got it up to 6%. Now, that's still not 10%, but we went from less than 2 to 6%. Sure. So we found methods to improve participation, which I think is a very good thing. But we were overrepresented by whites. We were overrepresented by older people. We were overrepresented in a lot of areas, and we had to do a better job, and we did that. We improved in every category, but we're still not hitting to be consistent with to be reflective of our whole population.
Sure.
So something we got to work on.
Sure.
And that's okay. You ask me again next time.
I will. It's going to keep coming up. Let me just jump around here. The old water tower that was on Jackson across from City Center, that came down in May. The other one looks very nice. Now, what happened to all that from the old tower? Is that considered scrap metal, and do we do anything with getting money back for that?
Whenever we bid it out, they have to include the salvage value, and they get to keep the salvage value, so they have to identify, we're going to credit you X amount of dollars.
So we get credit for it.
Oh yeah, that was built into that's built into the price. So
okay. All right.
so that's an expectation. Okay. pretty much with anything these days.
Yeah, because boy, scrap metal pays a lot of money.
It sure does.
It pays a lot of money.
It was amazing. You know, we've got a great time lapse on Oshkosh Media that shows it being dismantled. It really was.
Oh, I'll
something.
have to check that out.
It was
because I know you had talked about it coming down in May, and I kept looking, and then
Boom.
a couple days I didn't, and then the next time that I looked, it maybe was a week or so later, and I'm like, oh my God, it's gone.
3 days and 2 nights it went down.
Yeah, wow.
Really fast.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, this is exciting. A new housing project on the 20-some acre parcel that used to be the Morgan Door Company and then later became Jeldwin. You know, that's kind of been an eyesore for a long time. So $55 million development is possibly going in there, a housing development.
Yeah, I mean, we still have to wait for them to give the final, what's called the specific development plan. The council approved the general development plan, but they've got to now really refine that and everything. But they've indicated 4 buildings at a value of about $55 million, so we're excited. It may include some office and commercial space. And I know they're working on trying to get tenants, because for those types of things, you can't build until at least you got an anchor tenant.
Right.
So we're excited, looking forward to seeing that.
Good.
That'll be a nice addition. And with all the work going on Oregon Street, it'll be a nice little gateway into that area.
Yeah. What is going on down there, by the way, on Oregon?
That is a long-range project to better serve the south side of town with sewer service.
Okay.
Right now, we've got barely enough capacity to take care of that industrial area down there, but we have areas identified for growth for residential, and we don't have the capacity out there, both from a pumping standpoint as well as just the size of the sewer. So over the next 5 years, you're going to see us go all the way down to Ripple Road. So think about that.
Holy
downtown,
cow,
all
that
the way
is
to
a
Ripple
long
Road.
way.
It is huge. So all the inconvenience you see this year, we'll just move down the road.
You go south next year.
We're going to go to 16th this year,
Yep.
and then to, I believe, 20th in 2019, and then through Oshkosh Corp in 2020, and then just 5 years. Within 5 years, we'll be down by Ripple Road.
Yeah, I mean, it is a major inconvenience and yet necessary, because when we had those huge storms about 8 years or so ago, the 500-year flood where the better majority of the city was underwater to one degree or another, it was due in large part because the storm sewers just couldn't handle all the water. So this is a necessity for sure.
We got to keep the flow of stormwater from getting into our sewers. Mm-hmm. This will help a lot, but the side streets, we're going to be testing them, because we can do this great sewer on Oregon Street, but if we don't take care of the side streets, we're going to have an issue. And it's called I&I, inflow and infiltration. It's a major problem in cities like ours that used to have a dual system. We used to take care of sewer and sanitary sewer and storm sewer in one system, and we did away with that 80 years ago, but we're still transitioning even after 80 years.
So that's going to be a long project over how many years?
5 years. This is year 1 of 5.
Wow. Yikes. Okay, the busing situation for lower income students. The city was working on something jointly with the school district. Where is that at?
Well, there was a group volunteer group that was initiated by, I believe it was a former council member, a current school board member, Bob Peschel, that they were going to look at different things. Before he left, Superintendent Stan Mack had suggested an approach to take a look at ways to take care of low-income students rather than just do a blanket, everybody rides for free. Whichever scenario is ultimately selected, the Go Transit needs to be revenue neutral on that. We are subsidized heavily by state and federal support, about 54%, but then the rest comes from you and me, the general taxpayer, which I think is appropriate that it's taxpayer subsidized, sure. But we do rely on fare box revenue for about 20% of our costs. The communities that have done this, that have just said it's going to be free for all students, the school district and the city generally come to an agreement where we become revenue neutral, and then there's a balancing act. If you get more riders, the per unit cost goes down. If they get fewer riders, the cost per unit goes up a little bit. There's usually a nice median that's built in. If that's where they ultimately choose to go, we'll certainly work with the school district. But
was it something that you think will be in place? I mean, we're a couple weeks into summer vacation now for these students. So do you think by the time school starts in the fall, this will be in place or no?
No, not at all. We're
Okay.
actually working on what's called a transit development plan. We need to do those about every 5 years, and we're working on it right now. It's going to be finished next year. So I think we have to take a look at routes, because people are saying, well, the routes are inaccessible. Well, if the routes are inaccessible, it doesn't matter if it's free or $5 a ride, it's going to be a difficult problem. So we want to take a look at the routes and see if we need to do any tweaking of that, and if there's anything else that can be done. I don't think you're going to see a mass increase in ridership if we made it free, to be quite honest with you. So we have to be careful about making sure if we're going to fix the problem, we fix it legitimately.
Right.
I think what former Superintendent Mack had suggested was maybe there's a way we can take care of the kids truly in need, and without it costing a great deal more. School district's already providing us $15,000 to $20,000 annually, and Stan's recollection was that he wasn't aware of any kid getting rejected or turned away if they needed to get bus service. I think other groups like the Boys and Girls Club would like to see it, because after school, a lot of their members are they're of lower income status, and it's tougher for them to get to and from the Boys and Girls Club. So I think you're going to see other advocates for that. So I think it's still going to get discussed, but it won't be by this year. Probably in the next transit development plan, we'll discuss it and then figure out ways to, if they want to do it, how it's going to get done.
Sure. Okay. I want to get to a couple other things yet. Well, actually 3 things real quickly. On May 5th, the city held its first community Day of Diversity, or I can't remember the exact
Unity
name.
and Community.
Unity and Community. How did that go?
I thought it went very well. I think that the participation from the different ethnic groups was really significant and really cool. And the weather worked out well. I would say multiple hundreds of people showed up.
Really?
But I think people showed up for a very short time, and I think a lot of folks showed up, oh, my kid's doing dancing, so they showed up for that, and then but the food booths were just fabulous, and the lines were long, and these were all prepared and served by the different groups, the different ethnic groups, so you got a taste of the world by going to it.
Was this the first of a progression of, I mean, is this going to be an annual thing?
I think this is going to be an annual event. You got to have Mayor Cummings on the show.
Well, I'll get to him.
Yeah, you get to him. Or Sylvia Carey Butler with UW Oshkosh. She was also very, very pivotal in that. But I thought it was very well received, and I think it's got its sea legs. So I think we're going to see it happen again.
Good. EAA coming in just a couple of weeks from when we're taping this. What day is the mayor's breakfast? Where and how much?
Now the mayor's breakfast doesn't exist anymore.
It doesn't exist?
Doesn't exist.
Where have I been?
I think it just kind of evolved out. And that's why I think the mayor got motivated to let's do something different for the community.
Okay.
And that's where Unity in the Community came up. So that was a great 2-part question there. You didn't even realize it.
I didn't even realize it. It was a good segue, yeah. So nothing is done to really welcome these folks with because that's what it always was. It was always a nice, even though they're always welcome here, it was just a nice day of breaking bread together, city folks and the folks coming here from wherever.
EAA, I think their business model is to try to get people to get to their campus earlier and stay longer. So they started doing programs in the morning that were diverting some. The people who came, and most of them who came were the folks that were living or staying in the residence halls at the university. So it wasn't really attracting more than that.
Sure.
And a lot of those people were starting to go over to it. So we've started to lose numbers pretty significantly.
Okay. They're telling me about 4 minutes, which really means about 3. So you brought it up a couple of times, Polco, Polco, and there's another app. When it first started, it was called See, Click, Fix. C-Click Fix, and now it's called Connect Oshkosh. But they're two very different apps, and yet they're wonderful apps.
Well,
can you just tell us about them real quick?
Well, I'll start with the C-Click Fix, which is, we just call it Connect Oshkosh. C-Click Fix is the company that created the app for us. But it's for you to report anything you see that might be, that we can fix, whether it's it can be a pothole or a tree down in a park or in the public right-of-way, or maybe it's a property maintenance issue that you see. All you have to do is, if you've got your phone, you pull it out, you open the app, you take a picture, describe the problem, and it'll be sent and routed to the right person.
And it can be done anonymously as well.
Yes, it can.
That's the important
and we're
thing,
totally
too.
okay with that.
And it could also be someone who's not mowing their lawn, who's not shoveling their walks, who's not picking up dog poop.
The wonderful part of it is it's geocoded. So if you take the picture and send it, it knows exactly where you took the app at. So you can remain anonymous, but we know the location. And so
Of the problem.
Of the problem. Yeah. And so you can really identify it. I was walking down Main Street during a farmer's market, saw a problem with a light pole. Took a picture, sent it to the light guys. And it gets sent to the right person because a lot of times you don't know who to call.
Right.
And so this will take care of that for you. Polco is an online polling application that is scientifically validated. The founder of the company is somebody, a Wisconsin native, who was in the military and developed this procedure. And he has a whole staff that takes a look at the validity of the question. And we just do online polling to get feedback. What we've done with our applications is so well received that I've been asked to speak at a national conference to other city managers with Polco to talk about this. We did it at a Midwest Regional Conference. It got one of the highest scores for a presentation, so we're going to do it at a national conference in September. But it really is gotten people to think about ways in which public engagement is there. So the idea is you just don't put out a polling question, you provide background, supporting documentation. So, like the park one, explain what a 9-hole golf course entails. Explain what other things in our park plan are there. Educate the public before they tell you what they think about it, because it's not just as simple as saying, well, what do you think?
Right.
What do they know? And engage them more. And so we have over 1,000 subscribers. The founder, Jeff, said if you get 1,000 subscribers, you're going to do great. And my goal is to get 2,000, and we're probably at about 1,200 right now. So I'm very encouraged.
Well, very good. Polco, Polco, and the other one is Connect Oshkosh. They are both free apps, either at the iTunes App Store or Google Play. They're great. I have them both on my smartphone, and I use them religiously.
Good for you.
So, Mark, thanks for being here as always.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
That's going to do it for us. We'll have Mark back again when I'll have another long list. Twice a year we try
and we'll get through half of it.
Yeah, well, actually, I covered most of them.
Oh,
so,
good.
Very good. So thanks for being here. Thanks to the crew, and of course, thanks to you. You're why we do this. We will see you next time. Until then, take care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.